Hello from Halifax. This is Jo with Jo to the World Creations, and today we're going to learn how to crochet a baby blanket for beginners. I'm really excited to share this beginner crochet baby blanket pattern with you, and we're going to get right to the video tutorial. All of the details, such as how much yarn you will need, which hook size to use, how to adjust the size of the blanket, and all the written instructions are available for free on my website, or you can purchase the ad-free, print-ready PDF, and there are links to both in the description below this video. All right, let's get started and learn how to crochet a baby blanket for beginners step by step slowly. The first thing we're going to do is make a slip knot. Now, everyone has a different way of making a slip knot. I'm going to show you an easy way that works for me. As you learn how to make a slip knot, it's important to note the two parts of the strand. There's the tail, which is the end of the strand, the part that's cut off. So this is called the tail. And the other part is the working end of the strand. And that's the part that's attached to the skein or the ball of yarn. With my skein on my left-hand side, we're going to take our strand and make a loop with the tail on top of the working end of yarn. We're going to turn our right hand into a shark with a special trick. This shark can go forwards and backwards through a hula hoop. So we're going to lift up this loop, which we're going to pretend is a hula hoop, and our shark is going to come from back to front and take a big bite of the working end of yarn. I'm not going to let go. It's going to go backwards through the hula hoop, and then we are going to take the tail and the working end in our left hand and pull them both in this loop until a knot is formed. Now what we want to do is insert our crochet hook from back to front and adjust this loop by pulling on the working end of yarn. Now what we want to do is make sure that this tail is approximately 8 inches long. This ensures that there's enough yarn to weave in our loose ends. And you can see our slip knot is now securely on our hook. Quick note that for the rest of this video, I'm going to be using a size 3 yarn. This is Patton's Astra in the color Hot Blue. With our slip knot now made, and that slip knot does not count as the first chain, we are going to start by making a number of starting chains. To make the full baby blanket that is in the written instructions, so it's a baby blanket that's approximately 32 inches wide with the border or 28 inches wide without the border, you're going to chain 95. For this video tutorial, I'm going to make a small swatch, and I'm going to chain 11. And you're welcome to follow along with me, especially if you're a brand new crocheter, and we can do this step by step. But I'm going to be referencing my small swatch or sample, as well as the instructions for the full baby blanket throughout this video tutorial. So let's make our first chain stitch. To make our first chain stitch, we're going to take our hook and bring it under the yarn and away from us. This is called yarning over. Now the yarn is over our hook. We're going to take the hook head and rotate it down towards the floor. And we're going to use the handle of the hook to bring that hook towards the loop that's on our hook and hook that yarn so that yarn is getting caught in the hook. And then we're going to pull it towards the loop on our hook and pull it all the way through. Once it's through, we're going to rotate the hook so the head is facing up. And we've just created our first chain stitch. Let's make our second chain stitch. taking our hook and going under the yarn and away from us so that we're yarning over. We're going to rotate the hook so it's down facing towards the floor, and we're going to hook the yarn and pull it through the loop that's on our hook. And then rotate the hook back towards the ceiling. And now we have 2 chains completed. So going a little faster now, we're going to yarn over, rotate the hook down and pull that yarn through the loop on our hook, rotate up. So we now have 3 chain stitches made. Let's make another one. That's 4, 5, and hopefully by now you have the idea. I'm going to be making 11 chain stitches. If you want to make a small sample with me, make 11 chain stitches. If you want to make a full blanket, chain 95 and then come back to the video. So as you can see here, I have 11 chain stitches made. So just let me show you. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and the last one is this 11th chain stitch. The loop that's on our hook does not count as a chain stitch. Now let's start row 1. For row 1, we're going to be working into the second chain from the hook. So this is the first chain, and this is the second chain, which is where we're going to make our first stitch. So let's look at these chain stitches. This is the second chain from the hook, which is where we're going to be working into. This is the top loop of the chain. This is the bottom loop of the chain. And if you twist or rotate to the back of the chain, I'm going to take my hook out for a second here, you can see these bumps along the back. And these bumps along the back are called back ridge loops. And this is where we're going to be working into for all of row 1. What this means is we're going to insert our hook under the bump along the back. So there'll be 1 loop on our hook when we insert our hook, and then we're going to make our first single crochet stitch. So these bumps along the back, we're going to work into those all the way across row 1. So working into the second chain from the hook, rotate the chain so that you can see the back bumps or the back ridge loops, and insert your hook into the second back ridge loop from your hook. So you insert your hook into that back ridge loop, and now we are going to single crochet. So to single crochet, we're going to first yarn over. So we're going to take our hook and push it down and away from us, allowing the yarn to fall over our hook. Now we're going to rotate our hook head so it's facing down, and we're going to hook the yarn, and we're going to pull it through the place where we've inserted our hook. So we insert our hook into the back ridge loop. So we're going to pull this yarn under that back ridge only, not the second loop on our hook. So just under the place where we've inserted our hook, we're going to pull that yarn through that place. And now we're going to rotate the hook so it's facing up, and move our now 2 loops to our working area of the hook. Now we're going to yarn over again, rotate our hook down, hook that yarn, and bring it through both loops on our hook. And then rotate our hook up. And we've just created our first single crochet stitch. Now before going any further, we are going to put a stitch marker into that first stitch that we just made. I'm going to take my hook out, and I personally like to use safety pins. And we're going to take the safety pin and we're going to insert it into the top of the stitch. And what that means is to insert the safety pin under the top 2 loops of that stitch. So can you see here that safety pin's going under one of the top loops, the front loop, and now it's going to go under the back loop. Okay, and then you can close your stitch marker. And now we have a stitch marker in the top of the first stitch that we've made. We are now going to single crochet all the way across. And every time we single crochet, we're always going to work into the back ridge loops, which are the bumps along the back. So in the very next back ridge loop, we're going to insert our hook and single crochet. So yarn over, bring that yarn through the place where we've inserted our hook, rotate up. We have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, bring the yarn over your hook, rotate down, and then bring that yarn through both loops on your hook. And that's our second single crochet stitch now complete. You don't need to put a stitch marker in that one, it's just only the first stitch of each row we're going to put a stitch marker in. So working into each back ridge loop all the way across, you're going to single crochet. At the end of this row, you are going to have 1 less stitch than your number of starting chains. So for this video tutorial, I chained 11. I made 11 chains to start. So I'm going to have a total of 10 single crochet stitches at the end of this row. If you're making the full blanket and you've chained 95, you should have a total of 94 stitches at the end of the row. I'm just pausing here on this very last chain that we're going to work into, and just to point out the difference between the back ridge loop and the slip knot. So the slip knot is, we do not work into that, we work into the back ridge loop. So you can see that it's definitely a stitch that you need to work into, and you don't work into the slip knot. So working into that last back ridge loop, you are going to single crochet. So how do you count your stitches? Well, each single crochet stitch has 2 loops at the top, front loop and the back loop. So you can see that a single crochet stitch has been made by counting this as your first stitch, or it was the last stitch that we made, but if you're just counting, you can count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 is my first stitch, which is the one with the stitch marker. And that is why I've asked you to put a stitch marker for this video, so that it makes it easier for you to count your stitches and know where to start and end, because I think that's one of the trickiest parts for beginners. Now we're going to start row 2. And to start row 2, we're going to chain 2 and turn. So to chain, what we're going to do is yarn over, rotate our hook down, hook that yarn, and bring it through the loop that's on our hook. And then rotate our hook up. So we've just made 1 chain, but we want to chain 2, so we're going to do that again. And there's our chain 2. The next thing we're going to do is turn. And what this means is just to flip the work over, just like you're flipping over a page in a book. So you just turn it, and now the back of our work is facing us. Now that we've chained 2 and turned, we're going to be working into the very first stitch. The first stitch is the stitch that is attached to the chains or chain. So working into that first stitch, we're going to make a double crochet stitch. So to do that, we're going to yarn over. So we now have the yarn over our hook, over the working area. Now we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch. So going into that first stitch, we're inserting our hook. Okay, so we've got the place where we've inserted our hook right here. So there's 2 loops, but then we have 2 more loops on our hook. So where we've inserted our hook is right here, and then we have 2 more loops, the first loop and the second loop. Now we're going to yarn over again, bringing our yarn over our hook, rotating our hook down, and we're going to hook that yarn and bring it through the place where we've inserted our hook. So those 2 loops right there. And then rotate our hook up. Now we have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over again, rotate our hook down, and we're only going to bring this yarn through the first 2 loops on our hook to start. So we've hooked that yarn, bringing that yarn through the first 2 loops and rotating the hook up. We now have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over again, rotate our hook down, and bring that yarn through the last 2 loops on our hook. And now we have our first double crochet stitch now completed. We are going to place a stitch marker in the top of that stitch. So I'm removing my hook. Again, I'm just using a safety pin, and I'm going to insert the safety pin under the top of that first double crochet stitch. So under the top 2 loops. And close that up. And now we have a stitch marker in our first double crochet stitch. Working into the next stitch, we're going to make another double crochet stitch. And in fact, we're going to make a double crochet stitch in each stitch all the way across. So working into the next stitch, yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop. We now have 3 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull that yarn through 2 loops only. Rotate our hook up. We now have 2 loops on our hook. Yarn over, rotate the hook down, and pull that yarn through the last 2 loops. And that's our second double crochet stitch now complete. So keep making double crochet stitches into each stitch all the way across. You can pause the video and come back when you get to the very last stitch. That's the stitch with the stitch marker in it from the previous row. So when we get to the point where you're going to double crochet in the stitch before that, and then come to the video and we'll do the end of the row together. So I've made double crochet stitches in each stitch across, and I have 1 stitch left, which is the stitch with the stitch marker. So now I'm going to take out the stitch marker, and I'm going to work into that last stitch. Same way, make a double crochet into that last stitch. The stitch marker is just to help you start and end at the right places. So now I know exactly which is the last stitch. I'm going to double crochet normally, and this one can be a little tighter just because that first row gets a little tight there, but you just double crochet normally. And that completes the row. At the end of row 2, you should have a total of 94 double crochet stitches if you're making the full blanket, or if you're following along with me, you should have a total of 10 double crochet stitches. So just to count them really quickly, these ones are a little easier to see because they're bigger. So we've got 2, just make sure. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, and then that last stitch is the one with the stitch marker, which is 10. Another reason I wanted to have you place the stitch marker in the first stitch of the row is to help you count the stitches. It can be tricky, especially as a beginner, to know what is a stitch and what are the chain 2 stitches or the chain stitches that we use to start the row. And the chain stitches in this pattern do not count as stitches, so we never count the chains as stitches. Your last stitch that you're counting, if you're going across this way, the last stitch is the stitch with the stitch marker. So you have either 94 double crochet stitches or 10 double crochet stitches if you're just making the swatch like I am. Now let's start row 3. So to start row 3, we are going to chain 1 and turn. We are going to work, we're always going to work into the first stitch, which is the stitch attached to the chain. In that first stitch, we're going to single crochet. Insert our hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull our yarn through. We have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, and bring that yarn through both loops on our hook. And that is our first single crochet stitch made. We're going to put a stitch marker in that first stitch into the top of the stitch under the top 2 loops. Now we're going to make a single crochet stitch in each stitch across. So in the very next stitch, single crochet. In the next stitch, single crochet. And you're going to do this all the way across the row. You go ahead and complete that all the way across, making a single crochet stitch in each stitch, and come back to the video when you've reached the stitch with the stitch marker. So I've single crocheted all the way across. My next stitch is this where the stitch marker is, so I'm going to remove that stitch marker, and I'm going to work into the place where that stitch marker was. I'm going to single crochet. At the end of the row, you should have, if you're making the full blanket, 94 single crochet stitches completed. Or if you're making a sample swatch like me, we should have 10 single crochet stitches completed. To count them really quickly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then that 10th stitch is the stitch with the stitch marker in it. So for row 4 and on, we are going to be repeating row 2, row 3, row 2, row 3, row 2, row 3 for the rest of the blanket body. But I'm going to do row 2 and 3 once again with you just to make sure you're all good to go. So the instructions say repeat rows 2 and 3 consecutively. What that means, since we've just made a row of single crochet stitches, the next row is going to be a row of double crochet stitches. And to start that row of double crochet stitches, which this is row 2 I'm talking about, we're going to chain 2. So 1, 2, and then we're going to turn. Working into the very first stitch, the stitch that's attached to the chain 2, we're going to double crochet. We're going to put a stitch marker into the top of that first double crochet stitch. Now we're going to make double crochet stitches in each stitch across. Each row in this pattern has the exact same number of stitches. So if you're making this sample swatch, you're always going to have 10 stitches in each row. If you're making the full blanket, you should always have 94 stitches in each row. So in this row, we're going to double crochet all the way across. When you get to the stitch with the stitch marker, you know that's the last stitch. You take out the stitch marker, and since we're doing row 2 right now, we're going to make a double crochet stitch in that last stitch. So that completes row 2, and now we're going to do a row 3 repeat. So a row 3 repeat starts by chaining 1 and turning into the first stitch, single crochet. Place a stitch marker in the top of that first single crochet stitch that we just made. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. So you're going to repeat rows 2 and 3 until your blanket reaches approximately 32 inches high, or your desired height. So you can keep going or make it shorter. You can do whatever you'd like. Just a quick note here that I am reaching the last stitch in my row of single crochet stitches. So I'm taking out my stitch marker, and into that last stitch, I am going to single crochet. And that completes me repeating row 3. So what I do at this point is now repeat the row of double crochet stitches, which is row 2, and then the row of single crochet stitches, which is row 3. So you're going to keep doing this until, as I mentioned, your blanket height is approximately 32 inches, which is approximately 79 rows. I often get asked is how do you count rows? And I think in this pattern, it's especially easy because you can really tell the rows of double crochet stitches because they're nice and long. So if you know that the pattern started with a row of single crochet stitches, then you would know that's the first row, and then the second row is double crochet. This middle area here is this row of single crochets, so that was number 3, and then this is row 4. One important note is you want to make sure that you end the blanket body after finishing a row of single crochet stitches, which is a row 3. So we just finished repeating row 3. We made a row of single crochet stitches, and at this point you'll want to start the border. So you can keep going, just make sure your last row is a row of single crochet stitches, and then come back to the video and we will do the border together. Before we get to the border, I wanted to quickly show you what to do if you need to attach a new skein of yarn. So if your current ball of yarn, you've run out of yarn, you need a new ball of yarn, I'm going to show you how to attach more yarn to your work. So I'd recommend trying to do this at the end of a row. You don't have to, you technically can attach the yarn whenever you'd like, but for this video, I'm going to show you how to attach it at the end of a row. So I've just finished completing a row 3. Now, wherever you need to do this, that's okay. So I'm going to pretend that I've run out of yarn. So I take my new skein of yarn, and I'm going to use a different color. This is also Patton's Astra, and this one's in the color of deep pink. So if I want to attach a new skein of yarn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the new yarn and put it over my hook. And I'm going to leave an approximate 8-inch tail, and I've just put it on my hook. And all I need to do is now pull this new yarn through the loop of my current color or my current skein that is on my hook. So I just pull it through and then tighten everything up. And that's it. I can now crochet with my new color yarn or my new skein of yarn. So I've just finished a row 3. So in this example, what I would do is now chain 2, because I'm now working on a row 2, and turn my work. And now I'm going to double crochet in the first stitch. and I would just keep using my new skein of yarn. But you're going to want to cut the yarn of your old skein, and you want to leave again about an 8-inch tail. And we're going to use these tails to weave in the loose ends when we're all done. But that is how you would change, if you wanted to change colors, or if you need to attach a new skein of yarn, that is how you do it. It will be a little loose, but then when we go to weave in our loose ends at the end, we can tighten them up at that point. Now we are going to get to the blanket border. So we've just finished. It's really important that you've finished the blanket body by completing a row 3. So that's the row of single crochet stitches. So I've just done that. That's a row 3. Now I can start the blanket border. You are absolutely welcome to continue using the same color that you used for the blanket body. And if you're going to do that, you don't need to do anything else. You can skip right ahead to the instructions for border round 1. Or if you'd like, you can use a different color for the border. So to attach your border color, you're simply going to put your new color onto your hook, leaving about an 8-inch tail, and pulling that new color through the loop of your old color, and then pull tight. And you would fasten off your old color simply by cutting it, again leaving about an 8-inch strand so that it's no longer attached to the skein. And now we're ready to start border round 1. So to start border round 1, we are going to chain 1. And if you've changed colors, you just might need to tighten things up for a little bit. We are not going to turn. So your stitch marker from that last row, which was a row 3 repeat, should be on the top right. So we've chained 1 and we haven't turned. And now we are going to work down the side and around the blanket. And we are going to single crochet evenly around. Okay, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, but these are the instructions. So we're going to single crochet evenly around, and at each corner we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches. I'm going to show you exactly where I have single crocheted all the way around, exactly where to insert your hook, and exactly where I've made my corner stitches. However, I want to note that you don't need to make your single crochet stitches in the exact place. Working down the sides can be, and up the sides, can be very tricky. And I say that it's not an exact science, and that you don't need to have the exact right number of stitches. The goal of this round is to single crochet evenly around so that it creates a foundation row of single crochet stitches that will help you for the rest of the border. But this part is very tricky, so I'm going to show you step by step exactly where I've inserted my hook and where I make my stitches. But if you can't find the exact place that I've made my stitches, don't worry. And I'm also going to show you where I've made my corner stitches. But you can choose where you want to put your corners. So the goal is to make 3 single crochet stitches in the cornermost stitch or space of each of the 4 corners. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do this. So we're going to start by working down the side, and the first place we're going to work into is under the chain 2 that started the previous row of double crochet stitches. So I've chained 1 here. I'm going to rotate now so you can make it easier to see. under the chain 2 is where I'm going to insert my hook. And in that space, I'm going to make 2 single crochet stitches. So inserting my hook under the chain 2 and make 1 single crochet stitch. And then in this, under the same chain 2, in that space there, make a second single crochet stitch. Like I say, if you can't find the exact spot, that's okay. You just want to make sure you have an even, your number of single crochet stitches are just evenly all the way down the side. The next space or stitch we're going to work into is the last single crochet from the single crochet row below. And for this one, I'm going to insert my hook under the outermost loop of that last single crochet stitch. So inserting my hook under that outermost loop, and it can get tight. Now I've inserted my hook into that, and now I'm in a single crochet, and I'm just making 1. The next, we're going to keep working down, and next we're going to work under the next chain 2, because now we're on to the row of double crochet stitches here. So putting my hook under that chain 2, I'm going to make 1 single crochet and 2. Next, I'm going to find the last single crochet stitch and insert my hook under the outermost loop. And you're going to repeat that all the way down. As you come to the end of the side here, you're going to see the first row of double crochet stitches that you made. So you're going to, if you're following along with me, you're going to make 2 single crochet stitches under that chain 2 space. And then this is where I've chosen to make my corner stitch, or what I've identified as the corner. And into this corner stitch, which is for me the last single crochet stitch that we made in the very first row of the blanket body. So into that outermost loop is where I'm going to make 3, because now we're at the corner. This is what we do on each corner. We make 3 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. So I found my corner stitch. I'm going to make 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet stitches into the same place. So that's 2, and now make a third. So I have 3 single crochet stitches into that corner stitch. So this was our first corner that we made. Now I'm going to rotate my work so that I can work into it, and I'm working along the bottom, and I'm going to insert my hook under both loops of the chain. Okay, let me just point this out here. The first one's, I find it's a little tricky. So this is the stitch that's attached to the slip knot. I'm going to insert my hook under the first loop and the back loop there. This is how I'm going to insert my hook, and then I'm going to single crochet. Then I'm going to single crochet into the next chain stitch by inserting my hook under both loops. So, and this can get really tight, but just take your time. So I've inserted my hook under both loops, and now I single crochet under the next chain stitch, both loops, and single crochet. And I'm going to do this all the way across. So I have 1 chain stitch left across the bottom here, and I'm going to make 3, I'm going to treat this as my corner stitch, and I'm going to make 3 single crochet stitches into this stitch. So 1, 2, and 3. So this is my second corner. Now we're going to rotate and work up the side. So on this side, The first place we're going to work into is into the last double crochet stitch from the first row of double crochet stitches. The double crochet stitch has two halves. The bottom half, which is closer to the bottom here, and the top half, which is closer to the top of our blanket. We're going to work into the bottom half first and single crochet, and we're working into the outermost loop of that double crochet. And then we're going to insert our loop into the top of the double crochet, into the outermost loop, and single crochet. So inserting my hook into the bottom half of the double crochet and single crochet. The outermost loop of the top of the double crochet, and then single crochet. The next one can be really tricky to see, and that's why I say if you can't find the exact space that I'm showing you right now, that's okay. The next place we're going to work into is under the chain 1 that started the row of single crochet stitches. So there's a little gap here. We're going to insert our hook under the chain 1 and single crochet. So under that chain 1, inserting our hook and then single crochet. So repeat this all the way up. You can make a single crochet in the bottom half of the double crochet and then into the top half. And it is okay if you don't put it in the right place. And then under the chain 1, single crochet. So as you reach the top, the last place I'll be working in is that last row of double crochet stitches. So inserting my hook into the bottom half of it and then into the top half. And I just single crochet and then single crochet. So I've just worked all the way up the side. For the corner, I'm going to make my corner where my stitch marker is. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and where it was, which is the first stitch across the top, I'm going to make 3 single crochet stitches. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to make a single crochet stitch in each stitch across, and just single crochet normally. This is the easiest part because it's just working into the tops of the stitches. So inserting our hook under both loops and single crochet all the way across. And then when you get to the end where you've almost started, where I'm going to make my corner stitch at the top here, which is going to be my 4th corner, I'm going to make it in this stitch right here. So it was the last stitch before we made the chain 1 and attached the new yarn. But even if you are using the same yarn, you can make your quarter stitch into the last stitch across the top. So I have one more stitch before that. Into that last stitch, we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches, and that is the 4th corner. Okay, now we're going to skip over the chain 1 we made to start border round 1. So right here is the chain 1 that we made, and we're going to work into the very first single crochet stitch that started the round, and we're going to slip stitch into that. So into the top of the first single crochet stitch made in the round, slip stitch, which we haven't done yet, so I'm going to show you. Okay, so I've inserted my hook into that first single crochet made in the round. We're going to yarn over. We're going to rotate our hook so it's facing down, and we're going to pull the yarn through the place where we've inserted our hook. And this time we're also going to pull it through the loop that's on our hook. So I pull it through the place, insert my hook, and I'm going to pull it through the loop on my hook and then rotate up. And that completes border round 1. To start border round 2, we're going to chain 1 and turn. So we're going to chain 1 and flip our work over. And we're going to now be working in this direction, going all the way around. First thing we're going to do is single crochet in the first stitch, the stitch that's attached to the chain. So working into that first stitch, single crochet. And that's the first single crochet stitch made in the round. Now the instructions for the rest of the round are to single crochet in each stitch around, making 3 single crochet stitches in each corner. And where the corners are, I'm just going to show you this example, then we'll get to the starting one here. The corner stitch, there's only one of them that we make 3 single crochet stitches into. It is the middle of the 3 single crochet stitches we made from the previous round. So here is my corner from the previous round, and you can see that I've made 1, 2, 3 single crochet stitches into it. The tops of those are 1, 2, 3. When we get to each corner, for all 4 corners, working only into this 1 corner stitch, you're going to make 3 single crochet stitches into that corner. And we're going to do that for each corner all the way around. Now what's tricky about this is that we come up on our first corner stitch really quickly. In fact, for me, it's the next stitch that I have. Now, if it's a stitch or 2 away from you, that's absolutely okay. Don't worry about that. It's just as soon as you get to the corner stitch, this 1 corner stitch, which is the middle of the 3 single crochet stitches from the previous round, you're going to want to make 3 single crochet stitches into that 1 corner stitch. So for me, that's the next stitch. So 1, I'm making 3, 2, and 3 single crochet stitches into that first corner stitch. Now the rest of the part's super easy because I'm just going to make a single crochet stitch in each stitch around until I get to the next corner. So come back to the video and we'll do the next corner together. So I've made single crochet stitches all the way across the top here, and I'm coming up to the corner. So if you can see here, I have 1 stitch left before the corner stitch where I'm going to make 3 single crochet stitches into that corner stitch. So I have 1 stitch before that. Now I'm at the corner, and into that corner stitch, I'm making 1, 2, and 3 single crochet stitches into that corner. So I'm going to leave that with you now to single crochet all the way down and into the corner stitch, make 3 single crochet stitches, single crochet all the way across into the next corner stitch, make 3 single crochet stitches, and then single crochet all the way across here, and come back to the video when you're nearing the first single crochet that we made in the round, and we'll do that part together. So I'm nearing the end of the round. I actually only have 1 stitch left, so I'm going to single crochet into that last stitch, and I'm going to skip over the slip stitch in the chain 1, and I'm going to work directly into the first single crochet stitch that we made in the round. And working into that first stitch, I'm going to slip stitch. And that completes border round 2. For border rounds 3 and 4, we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did for border round 2. So for border rounds 3 and 4, The instructions are to repeat round 2. So what this means is to chain 1 and turn, and you're going to work into the very first stitch, the stitch that's attached to the chain, and single crochet, and you're going to single crochet all the way across until you get to a corner stitch. When you get to the corner, make 3 single crochet stitches, then single crochet all the way until the corner, make 3 single crochet all the way across, 3 single crochet stitches in the corner, single crochet all the way up, make 3 single crochet stitches in the corner, and when you are, after completing your last single crochet, join the round by making a slip stitch into the very first stitch made. So you're going to do that for border round 3 and do it again for border round 4. So just make sure that when you start round 4, you're going to turn, because those are the instructions. Chain 1 and turn, single crochet in the first stitch, and in each stitch around, making 3 single crochets in each corner. So you go ahead and do that for border round 3 and border round 4, and come back to the video and we will do border round 5 together. So I've just finished round 4 of the border, and now we're going to start border round 5. To start border round 5, we are going to chain 2 and turn. So we've been chaining 1 so far for the border, but now we're going to chain 2. So 1 and 2, and now we're going to turn. For this round, we are not going to work into the first stitch, the stitch that's attached to the chain 2 that we just made. So we're going to skip over that first stitch and work into the next stitch. And into that next stitch, we are going to double crochet. For the rest of this round, the instructions are almost identical to the previous border rounds that we've been doing, but instead of making single crochet stitches, we're going to make double crochet stitches. So the instructions are to double crochet in each stitch around, making 3 double crochet stitches into the corner stitch. So it's almost exactly the same. We're just now making double crochet stitches all the way around. And at the corner, in the corner stitch, which again is the middle of the 3 single crochet stitches from the previous round, you're going to make 3 double crochet stitches into that corner stitch. And you're going to do that for all 4 corners. So that's my 3rd double crochet stitch I've made in the corner. So you go ahead, put me on pause, come back to the video when you're nearing the start of the round, and we'll join the round together. I am nearing the end of border round 5. I have 1 stitch left, so I'm going to make a double crochet stitch into that last stitch. And then I am going to slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet stitch that we made. So there's the top right there. We're not working into the slip stitch or the chain 2. We're going to work right into the top of the first double crochet stitch, and we're going to make a slip stitch to join the round. So insert a hook, hook over our yarn, pull it through, and pull it through the loop on our hook, and there's our slip stitch made. For border round 6, we are going to start the round by making a chain 1. So chaining 1, and for this round we are not going to turn. So we're going to keep our work exactly how it is and work in the same direction. We are going to skip the first stitch, the stitch that's attached to the chain. We're not going to work into that. Into the next stitch, we're going to slip stitch. So inserting a hook into the top of the double crochet stitch below, grabbing our yarn and pulling it through, and then pulling that yarn through the loop on our hook, and there's our slip stitch made. In the very next stitch, we're going to make 4 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. So working into the next stitch, let's make 4 single crochet stitches. So that's 1, 2, I'm still working into the same stitch, 3, and then 4. And this creates our first shell. So every time we make 4 single crochet stitches into the same stitch, it's called a shell. Now we're going to skip the next stitch, and in the following stitch, slip stitch. So skipping the next stitch into the following stitch, slip stitch. So we've just made a slip stitch. In the next stitch, we are going to make 4 single crochet stitches into that next stitch. So creating another shell. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to skip the next stitch. So we're going to repeat the following instructions all the way around. So we've just skipped a stitch. The next thing we'll do is slip stitch in the next stitch. Slip stitch. In the next stitch, make 4 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. That's 3 and 4. And then skip the next stitch. So you're going to repeat that all the way around. And when you get to the corners, nothing special happens. So I've just made a shell, then I skip the next stitch, I slip stitch into the next stitch, and then make my next shell in the next stitch, which is 4 single crochet stitches. Skip the next stitch, slip stitch, 4 single crochet stitches, and then skip the next stitch. So you're going to repeat that all the way around. And we're going to come back to the video when you're nearing the first shell made, and I'm going to walk you through a couple different scenarios because you might not have the exact right number of stitches, and it's completely okay. I'll walk you through different scenarios of how to finish this round. So I've just made a shell and I'm approaching the first shell made, and the goal is to have a slip stitch in between the first shell made and your last shell. So in this case, my pattern is working out because I've just completed a shell, I skip a stitch, and now I can slip stitch into the first slip stitch that we made, and the pattern works out. And I know it's a little clumpy here, but once you fasten off and weave in your loose ends, it's going to look nice and even. But what if your pattern isn't working out and your shells are really close together or too far apart? Well, there's an easy fix for that. What you can do is simply back up, and you might have to back up a couple of shells, but after one of your last shells, to make your pattern work, sorry, one of my single crochet stitches came out. So now I have 4 single crochet stitches. And normally I would skip the next stitch, but if you need to make your pattern work so that the shells all look evenly spaced, just don't skip the next stitch like you normally would, and just do this at the end, not all the way around, just as you're nearing the first shell made. So in this case, what I would do is not skip a stitch, and I would slip stitch into this stitch, and then I'd make the next stitch a shell. So I'd make my 4 single crochet stitches into the next stitch, and then at this point I can now skip a stitch and slip stitch into the first slip stitch made. So you can just play around to see what's going to work best for your shells, but that's how you can adjust the pattern to make it work. And then once the ends are woven in, the shells should be looking very nicely spaced. So the last thing to do is weave in all our loose ends. But first, let's fasten off. So what this means to fasten off is to cut your yarn. So the yarn that's attached to the skein, you're going to cut it, leaving an approximate 8-inch tail. And then you're going to take, first what we got to do is take this end and we're going to pull it through the loop. So I'm taking the end, I'm going to feed it through the back of the loop here, and then I'm going to pull that loop tight. And that is how you fasten off. And then get your yarn needle, and we are going to weave in all our loose ends. And I'm just going to show you how I do it. There's lots of different ways of how to weave in all your loose ends. But my goal with weaving in loose ends is to secure the yarn. So remember when we attached the new color, it was a bit loose. So first of all, I want to tighten it, both strands, to make sure that it's nice and secure. And then I'm going to, with my yarn needle, weave in the ends underneath the stitches so that the end is hidden. So this tail is hidden. And this is why I recommend an 8-inch tail, just so you have lots of yarn to work with. When I'm weaving in the ends, I'm trying to replicate the natural look of the stitches and hide the tails very naturally, so that when you stretch out the blanket, you can't see your stitches. And obviously work the color that you used for the blanket body into the blanket body parts, and you weave the parts from the border into the border color. So I'm just weaving in my ends into the stitches, and whenever I feel like they're nice and secure, and it's always good to go in different directions. So I've just gone down. So what I could do is go back up, and that's really good if the blanket's going to be washed a lot, then this helps secure the ends from coming apart. So there we go. I feel like that end is nice and secure, and I stretch it out a little bit, make sure that it's good and in there, and then you can cut your yarn as close to the stitch as possible, but leaving a little bit of wiggle room so that when you stretch it out, the end just gets hidden in one of those stitches and that you can't see it from the front or the back. So that is how I weave in my loose ends. So you go ahead and weave in all your loose ends that you have in the blanket. And that completes this video tutorial. So I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to see your finished blankets. And I really appreciate you watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed this pattern. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.